So, Mr. Val De La O, you've got a colorful life, and you're so young still. You look like you're 60, if that's not insulting you. Okay, Barbaro, how do you do it, and how did you get started into television? Let's do it that way.
Well, I was telling you before off camera that if I had to start all over again, I would not have done it because it was so much work, so much sacrifice, and so many desprecios. At that time, the white folks, and I'm not white, I'm brown.
Okay.
At that time, the white folks would not let anybody in that was brown to do on camera.
Wonder why that was.
You could be sweeping the streets or the floors or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it was a sign of the times. I'm not so sure they really, because I have some real good friends of mine, and later on, these friends helped me along. But in the beginning, since I used to play and sing, and I did a little bit of singing on radio, I said to myself, one day I watched, and there was no shows in Spanish, and I said, maybe I can start a TV show in Spanish. But it was easier said than done.
Sure.
And so the first thing I did, I went to the 3 TV stations in town because there were only 3, Channel 4, 13, and 7.
Yeah.
So I went to Channel 4. And they would not let me in to see the manager. Somebody in the door was saying, what is your name? I said, my name is Val De La O. I said, yeah. He said, I want to see Mr. Jerry Danziger. He said, what for? Well, I said, I want to talk to him about the possibility of starting my a Spanish show here at KOB. What? So they would go and tell Mr. Danziger. And Mr. Danziger would say, no, we don't want nothing like that. I want to talk to him. And that's it. And they would run me out.
Wow.
So I went 2 or 3 times, and every time I went, he would call me the kid. Is that kid here again? Now tell him we're not interested. Let him out. I never got in to see Jerry Danziger.
Wow.
So then I went to Channel 13 across the street,
Okay.
And I went to see Mr. Heaven Street.
Right.
La misma cosa. He
Same
would not
thing.
let me talk to him.
Same thing.
So finally, I said, well, I'm going to see Channel 7. So I went to see Channel 7, and Max Clore at that time was the general manager.
Yes, he was.
And he would not see me either. And they were all very
Afraid.
despotas. They were very...
Yeah.
So then, but that was all right. I kept going. I figured, I was so used to that before because everywhere that you went for a good job, they were kind of... A lot of discrimination in those years.
There was some kind of actor in you because you were used to the
And
rejection.
I talked to a lot of big stars, by the way, like Henry Darrow.
Yeah.
Henry Darrow, he was a big star. He was a movies, and I've talked to Ricardo Montalban and some of those people who later on became my guests on my TV show, and they told me the same thing in movies in Hollywood and whatever.
Yeah.
But anyway, Channel 7, eventually, one day I noticed that the secretary would sit right in front, and then around the corner, Max Clore would sit there in his office.
Sure.
So, and I wanted to see him. So one day I waited by the car, in my car outside, and I was waiting for the secretary to leave for lunch. So the secretary left for lunch. At that moment, I went in to Max Clore's office, and I stood right before his desk. He was like this, and he looked at me. Who are you? I said, I'm Val De La O. I want to talk to you. And are you the kid who's been wanting to talk to me about a TV show in Spanish? He said, yes, sir. He says, so he took his watch off. I never forget that. Took his watch off and put it there. He says, I'm going to give you 5 minutes to talk to me. He says, and that's it.
Oh, my God.
So I started to talk to him about the show. Okay. And I think it went into like 10 minutes or so. But anyway, he gave me the impossible. He says, well, he didn't say yes, he didn't say no. All he says, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. On Class C time, I didn't know what the hell Class C time was.
Right.
Turns out the Class C time was the cheapest time on TV.
Yeah.
He says, on Class C time, he says, the commercials at that time, you're talking about 1962, were selling for like $15 a commercial,
Sure.
30 seconds.
On television.
He says, if you bring me 6 contracts, non-cancelable, for 1 year at double the rate, instead of 15, it would be $30 a commercial. I will give you 1/2 hour.
Wow.
I said, okay.
And is that money for him?
He thought that it was impossible, I guess.
Yeah.
I went out, and about a week later, I walked in with 6 contracts, non-cancelable, at $30 for
each
30
spot. Right.
I said, here they are, Mr. Danziger.
Oh no,
I mean, with
Sklar.
Mr. Sklar.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have a half hour starting.
Ofrecen este bonito
whatever,
baile
some
que
Saturday.
se llama Jesucita en Chihuahua y vamos a bailar.
You were a pioneer. There's no doubt about it.
So I asked, by the way, where's the studio? In there. It turns out it was an old abandoned garage.
Okay.
It was a garage. Wow. And so now they assigned a director to me, Vince D'Angelo. Do you remember Vince D'Angelo?
I do not.
Vince D'Angelo he was kind of cross-eyed. He was a wonderful man, and later on he quit TV and became an attorney. Vince D'Angelo, but he was so nice to me.
Yeah, helped you out and encouraged you.
I said, "What are we going to do, Val?" He said, "Well, I don't even know what to do." I said, "But I'm going to bring some mariachis and some singers, and we're going to do some stuff." And I already had some sponsors, see. But in those years, there was no videotape, and there was no teleprompters. So whatever you said, you have to say it just like we're saying it now.
Ad lib, yeah, sure. I'd have been
you had to
screwed.
ad lib everything. Okay. So then. Everything was on cue sheets. So what? I remember the first time I invited a mariachi.
All right.
Some mariachi that was here in Albuquerque.
Yeah. How'd that turn out?
And they did my show about 3 or 4 times, and then one Saturday they didn't show up.
Oh, well, then what'd you do to fill the air?
And I had no talent, no nothing, and I had all kinds of commercials. So luckily, I had the guitar there, and so I said, okay, aquí tenemos a Mike's Food Market, venden el chile colorado, el chile verde, por tanto, y la manteca, 25 libras la libra, and all kinds of things. I would do my commercial, and then I would put my guitar down. And now les voy a cantar una canción que se llama Solamente una vez, and I would get my guitar and sing a song. Then I would sing the song and say, okay, ahora vamos a hablar de Ace Auto Supply, que del aceite de carro vende and then I would come back and sing a guitar.
Do another song.
And I did my half hour, see.
Wow.
Later on, and one day, I was sitting there afterwards, and I got a call from Santa Fe. Mm-hmm. And this man called me. He says, my name is Mario Leiva.
Andale.
And he says, I drive a taxi here in Santa Fe, and I'm a professional comedian, and I think you need a comedian pretty bad. He says, well, I said, I know I need a lot of things, believe me. He says, I'm going to go and see you. So he came over, and so we did a couple of sketches that he had written or he had memorized, and we clicked.
And this was a sidekick of his. He was auditioning for to you. And I remember him and his name.
He didn't do nothing but comedy. That's it.
That's right. Sidekick. And what was his name?
Mario Leiva.
No, but his stage name. Didn't you call him?
Mario Chimplín.
Ándale.
Mario Leiva Chimplín.
Now, when did you have somebody called Cantinflas? Or
that's him. That's
him.
Yeah. Era el doble de Cantinflas.
Ándale.
You know, which is...
It was a Cantinflas double.
And he was very good.
Allá está. Está caliente. No, pues vente para acá para que me untes bien, porque...
Espérate, yo creía que te iba a rasurar la ceja, hombre.
No, a ver, qué barro, me pusiste en la ceja, a ver.
¡Ey, fíjaro! Esta noche me emborracho bien, me mamo bien.
¡Ándale, hombre!
Espérate, hombre, pues espérate. Deja ver a ver si... Es que te estoy poniendo nervioso porque aquí se te va a acabar tu personalidad, man.
Se me va a acabar el tiempo.
Te va a acabar los guancharos que hay aquí, man. A ver, pruébala, a ver, ¿a qué te sabe?
Pues agúntale.
Espérate, primero con el de dulce. A ver, ¿qué sabe?
Ándale, hombre, se nos
Yo
acaba el
creía que era
tiempo.
de piña, pero es de vainilla, mano. Ahí te va. ¿Un poquito?
Ya tenemos que un minuto.
¿Cómo pica? Bueno, ahí va, ahí te va de volada. Ahí te va de volada. De volada. Así. Así, 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 ¿Le damos otra más? A verás, échame la navaja, por favor.
¿Qué no me vas a untar más, nomás todo eso?
Pues espérate, yo... No, esa no, porque le tiene miedo a él. ¿A qué?
No,
No,
queda.
esa tampoco. Esa está muy grandota. Esa.
Oye, no me vas a ir a cortar, ¿eh?
No. Sana canabra, abracadabra, a ver cómo sale el bigote. A ver cómo se
Ándale,
corta.
ándale, ponle.
Escucha.
Un lado.
One.
Un lado.
Oye, pues que esta no tiene navaja, hombre. ¿Qué es eso?
A ver, cómo, a ver, tapa el espejo.
Espérate, todavía no acabo. Falta el otro laredo.
Un lado nomás.
Mira nomás qué obra maestra estoy haciendo yo, mano. Qué barbaridad.
No, me estoy pareciendo a ti, mano.
¿Qué quieres un Cantinflitas Junior?
Ándale, porque se nos acaba el tiempo.
Ok,
Ya
vamos.
se nos acabó el tiempo.
Ya se nos acabó el tiempo. Uy, ya se creó. Ok.
Ay, hombre, qué barro, mira cómo mentaste.
Pues de una vez para que no te quedes con hambre.
Tienes que raspar.
A este no le tengo que decir estira la trompa.
Ándale.
Pues ahora se te pegó muy bien, ¿o quiere? ¿No quiere?
Ay, no me cortes. ¿Ya estuvo?
Ay, dile que te fue bien.
Mira cómo me dejaste, condenado.
No, pues nada más si te lo acabas en la casa, mano.
No, ahorita continuamos, ya. Amores.
Ya me salí con la mía, ahora sí no dejé como tranquilidad.
Hasta el próximo sábado, damas y caballeros.
Dentro de unos cuantos momentos, no sé qué, pero ahora este importante mensaje comercial.
Yeah, I watched him. I remember.
kept him for
Made
a
us
while.
laugh.
Well, he stayed with me till I fired him in about 5 years before we quit the show because he started to drink a lot and he went homeless. And I tried everything to help him, but he wouldn't.
Yeah.
So anyway, one day my co-host Juan Raigosa.
Yeah.
I'll tell you how I met him. My wife was working for a Mace Music Company.
Yeah.
And
May's music.
and I in those years I was always looking for somebody to interview, and because it was in its infancy, there's no TV shows in Spanish. So she just happened to meet this Juan Raigosa, Colonel Juan Raigosa. He was a full colonel,
Wow.
full bird. And he was very young. He was about 42, 44 years old. And she told me one day, she says, you ought to interview this colonel that comes into May's Music Company because he's very handsome, very tall, and very educated. And I said, well, let's bring it on. So I invited him, and he he was my guest on Channel 13. That's when I was then. Mm-hmm. And I interviewed Juan Raigosa, and he was so interesting. I kept inviting him over and over again. And before you know it, he kind of became a de facto co-host on the show.
Yeah, sure.
So then I was in KGGM for, when they fired me from Channel 7, I went to Channel 13. And by this time I had a little bit of name, and they hired me right away to do a show in Spanish on Channel 13. And so I went to KGGM, and Virgil Abeta was very good to me, the late Virgil Abeta. And they put me on Saturday afternoons also at 4 o'clock. So then I was there for almost 4 years, 3 years in fact. And then one day they fired me. And I didn't even know I had been fired. I came to do the show, and there was a slip of paper on my desk that said, you no longer have this show.
Oh, my God.
So
very ruthless. Hey, let's back up to Channel 7. They fired you. Why, if I may ask?
I don't know. They just, because I was doing real good commercially. They didn't want brown people there. That's what's really what. I mean, I don't say that maliciously,
No,
but
I know.
They just didn't. They found it kind of strange that they have this guy by the name of De La O and Martinez,
The
Gurule and everything.
The thing too is that
So anyway, so in Channel 13, the excuse that they gave me was that I was making too much money, which I became so good at selling commercials because I've always been a salesperson. And by the way, if you want to start a business, the first thing you need to learn is how to sell.
Amen.
Because you have to sell yourself, first of all. and then you sell your product or whatever. In this case, the product was me, because So I started to sell commercials, and Juan helped me a lot. And before you know it, we were selling tons of commercials.
Nice.
On KGGM, and we didn't have enough space to put them in. So then I had told Virgie, I said, Virgie, is it possible you give me another show? And she said, I'll give you one on Monday nights right after the news.
Oh, that's not too bad.
So now I had one Saturday afternoon at 4, and I had one starting at 10:30 right after the news. And so here, another show.
Right.
So then I was doing very good with 2 shows. And I started to make a few dollars commercially.
Sure.
Because I was making a commission.
Yeah.
And one day I walked in about 3 years later, and there was a slip of paper on a spindle.
Yeah.
Little yellow slip.
Sure.
And it was from Dusty Rhodes from KGGM. By the way, these people are all gone, so they can't sue me anymore.
I hear you.
Dusty Rhodes, he was a sales manager, and he was Virgie Aveta's brother-in-law.
Okay.
And he said, Val, you are making too much money. And so we're going to have to let you go.
You're probably taking some of the revenue from there.
Whatever it was. So there I was without a show again.
Okay.
So then I started thinking about leaving TV.
Okay.
Because it was just too much hassle. I was not making any money. The only money that I used to make was I make a little bit, maybe $400 or $500 a month or so, and that's about it. But I used to I had to make a living for my family, and I always had a side job. I would be selling cars, and I was on radio, by the way, at that time also.
Wow.
Selling cars or selling yerba buena, whatever it was that I could sell to make a living. And by this time I had 3 kids.
Yeah.
And so, 2.
Oh, tell me about those kids in a second. I just want to remind people that you're listening to the one and only, the great Val De La O. I know you're scratching your head. We know this guy.
Ask me about my name, though.
We will ask you about your name because it is Val De La O. Those 4 different things.
I changed my name. Now it's Pamphilo.
At any rate, it's on the Nelson Martinez Spanglish Show. Thank you for tuning us in, and I hope you like us there and tell your friends about it. This is a show about local folks who made well, and even if they're young people, they're still going to be on the Nelson Martinez Show because they're talented and they're enthusiastic, and they could turn out to be a successful show host, by golly. Thank you, Val.
And there's not too many of us around either,
Who was it around?
Me estoy poniendo viejito.
Oh.
I'll be leaving pretty soon, by the way.
Todos otros will be leaving.
I'll be leaving pretty soon.
Oh, you will, huh?
Yes.
Okay. Is anybody going with you, or you're just...
I'm going to Cancun.
I was going to say, can we go to Cancun with you? Very good. Do you vacation a lot?
I used to. When my wife was alive, my wife died 7 years ago.
And that was in 19 or 20... What are we, 24, so 14 more or less?
2017.
17, oh my gosh.
El 5 de Mayo, she died on my birthday.
Wow.
Mi cumpleaños es el 5 de Mayo.
Wow. I'm sorry to hear that. And I guess, in a way, you may have looked at it positively. Perhaps, if there's a way. And you're doing okay now. You go.
I'll do a dance for you after a while.
Well, I'm also always amazed at musicians. And you mentioned earlier you play guitar, you sing. Do you still do any of that?
Not too much anymore. I lost my the desire to play music and to sing when my wife died.
Sure. Because
it just broke my heart.
Sure.
I almost died when my wife died because she died, and then when I had to give the order to pull the plug on her. She was on life support.
Wow.
And so I started to die, and I didn't know it. And I couldn't walk from here to there. And I was like in a fog or something. And so my son-in-law took me to the doctor, my primary doctor. And he did an EKG and stuff like that. And all of a sudden he said, "Oh, my God, you have a heart blockage." He did like that. I said, "What's going on, doctor?" He says, "You have a heart blockage. I have to put a pacemaker in you." And I said, "Well, can you do it tomorrow?" I said, "Doctor, because my girls are picking a casket for my wife, and I want to go help them pick the casket." And he said, "Well, why don't you call them and pick 2 caskets?" because you only have about 5 to 7 hours to live.
Oh, my God.
And so he told my son-in-law, he says, take him to the hospital right away. I'm going to call ahead, and the doctors will be ready to put a pacemaker in him. And my son-in-law took me to the hospital, and sure enough, there were 2 doctors there, and they put me on a gurney. And they, are you ready, Mr. De La O? I said, yes. Boom, they gave me an anesthesia, and they knocked me out, and they put a pacemaker in me.
Wow.
And to this day, I have a pacemaker. And the best way that I can explain what a pacemaker is in the event that you need you're going to have a heart attack or something's wrong with your heart, the pacemaker will kick in. And it happened to me one time. The doctor says he probably won't do anything to you until when you need it, and the pacemaker will kick in.
Wow.
I was in Walmart one day, and I was walking around. I know the fees going, looking at this and that and the other and everything else. And all of a sudden, the pacemaker kicks in, and you feel like somebody...
A jolt.
Like a fist, they hit you on the chest like this.
Wow.
Real.
Wow.
I felt like that.
Jeez.
And I knew it was a pacemaker. But then I recovered very quickly. And then that's it. Nothing happened. Back to normal. So about an hour later, they called me from the hospital because the pacemaker, muy chismón. The pacemaker is always telling the hospital how... The hospital is always telling them what's happening. And I got a call from the hospital say, Mr. De La O, yes, we know that you had an episode with your pacemaker. Oh, yeah? Yeah, they didn't... Well, he says, can you come in tomorrow so we can check it up? That's it.
With chismón. You got to explain that this is a bilingual show after all. Chismón meaning like a tattletale.
Yeah, gossiper. So chismón is a gossiper.
So it lets you know.
So I went into the hospital and they checked. Everything was all right now, so keep doing what you're doing. And since then, I haven't had the pacemaker do anything to me. Oh, and it's good for 13 years. Oh, wow. And I've had it for... going on 8 years now.
Oh, good. And you feel okay about that whole thing.
So if anybody, this is unsolicited advice that I'm giving to people. If the doctors ever want to put a pacemaker in you, don't hesitate.
Right. Oh.
Put a pacemaker, because I've had it for 7 years and nothing happens. It's just there in the event that you may need it.
Wow.
And if you may need it, it's because you're going to die. So... Let them put them in.
In a short answer there, if you can. So what happens? You get a blockage, and then or what? A blockage of too much cholesterol in there. And
I don't know what it is. It's just I think the heart skips a beat or something, or it comes out of synchronization or something.
Wow. Well,
because half of the heart is working in sync with the other half of the heart.
Sure.
I'm not a cardiologist, but I can tell you that. It puts the body into rhythm again.
Yeah, sure.
And the pacemaker will do it.
Well, it's good to have you here today, by golly. Again, thank you so very much. We're not ending the interview just yet. We're going to just tease it a little bit for the next segment to tell me how in the world you survived at the beginning, financially. I mean, nobody was really... I know you sold commercials later on, but I want you to hold that thought.
Well, that's what I'm doing right now. I'm hoping that you will give me $5.
Well, I got $7.50. How's that?
Oh, that's good. Okay.
Hey, we'll be right back on the Nelson Martinez Spanglish Show. Thank you for tuning in. I think you remember me from Action 7 News. Hey, it's been fun retiring, but we got to come back and share the microphone with some most interesting people. Today, Val De La O, if you haven't recognized him yet. Stand by. We'll be right back.
What do you mean your DJ canceled? Don't panic. Lessman's can help you. You can rent a sound system for your event at Lessman's Pro Audio and Lighting, and they can also show you how to use the sound system you rent. Don't forget, Lessman's also has film equipment, projectors, screens, plus much more. Make your event more memorable with Lessman's Pro Audio and Lighting. Visit Lessman's today at 5413 Lomas Northeast or online at lessmans.com or call 268-2111. That's 268-2111. Lessman's Mean Gear.